Hello, everybody, and welcome to Pokesports, a competitive Pokemon podcast. My name's Mike, and I play with one Pokemon on the field.
My name's Kevin. I play with two Pokemon on the field.
And today we are joined by Kelvin Koon, or as we would know him as the creator of Babiri.net. Kelvin, how you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
Babiri.net is a fantastic site that records the 100 most successful teams for VGC 2020 from PokemonShowdown.com every single day. Why does this site exist? What happened?
So a little bit of background about myself was I started playing VGC in about 2014. So I started playing in locals like Premier Challenges. And from there, I ended up getting good enough to go to Worlds in 2016, and that was my true first experience with meeting all of the best players in the world and getting a taste of the competitive scene, really. After that, I haven't really been playing, but I have friends who have been keeping up and trying to do as well as they can. So for me, when I was competing and playing, team building is a really difficult thing. I think we can all agree on that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, especially for new players, where a lot of times you don't know where to begin. So for me personally, I really like to use Pokemon Showdown for practicing and kind of scouting out what people are using. And so right now with Pokemon Showdown, you can see the top users and you can see their replays, but there's no real convenient way to go about doing both of them at the same time, right?
Uh-huh.
You'd have to copy and paste the username into the replay section, and then you'd have to scroll through and find the first 2020 replay, for instance. And I thought it was very tedious, especially doing it for, say, 100 teams or even 500 teams. So this was where the idea began, where I thought I could do better than this, and I can make a tool that makes it very easy and accessible for people to find out what teams are out there. A little bit further about this is Babiri.net actually started as a single Python script in about 2018, I think, and it was a really, really badly written script. All it would do is it would do the same thing effectively as now, where it would look for the top 100 users, find the teams if they existed, but it was very prone to crashing, and all it did was write to a Google Sheets file.
Oh,
so
I see. Okay.
I was the only one who had access to it, so it wasn't very useful.
At what point did you decide to kind of change it around to make it more aesthetically pleasing?
So changing it around to make it a lot better took a lot of, how would I say? It took a lot of planning for sure, because I'm still a student. So up until December, I was still in school and now I'm in an internship. So I'm able to have more time after work, for instance, to work on things like this. I started off bouncing a lot of ideas around with other people who are developers. So a few of my friends who didn't play Pokemon necessarily, but they had an idea about how to, for instance, coordinate a website and what goes into it. The first thing that I started with was rewriting the script that scrapes for teams.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as I mentioned earlier, the first iteration of the script was really prone to crashing, and it took about 10 minutes to get 100 teams, which for something like this, the amount of time doesn't matter, but it was still very annoying to test.
Right.
And I think it was a lot better when I improved upon it, because I basically found out, this is a little bit nerdy, but a friend of mine and I basically looked into how Pokemon Showdown gets the teams. And so they make an API call to an endpoint. And before my friend and I were looking into it, we didn't know where the endpoint was. But then we found out where it was. And from there, we were able to make the script a lot cleaner.
Interesting.
That is very, very basic behind it. Don't worry if you don't understand it. It's just a bunch of lingo.
So basically, there was a place online that stored all of these teams, basically, and you were trying to find where that point was and extract the data from that.
Yeah, so a little bit more about this was, it's basically an endpoint. So for instance, if I tell the endpoint, hey, I want your teams, it will return all the teams to me, for instance. Maybe it won't be very clean. I will have to clean it up, but it's the starting point. There's a framework called Selenium, and what Selenium does is it automates web actions, so to speak. So for instance, it'll automate mouse clicks, typing if you want it to. And there are three problems with this. The first of which was it's really, really slow because it's not made for scripting. It was made just for automation testing for websites. The second thing was it was very prone to crashing. So when a website renders, there's certain elements that don't render in time. And when my script tried to click on something that wasn't rendered, it would crash. And that's really not what you want. And the third thing was I was running it on my local machine. So I was running it on my computer, and it would make my computer very slow because I don't have a very good computer.
Right. I mean, that's always part of it, right?
Yeah.
Would you consider yourself more of a Pokemon fan or more of a tech geek?
Interesting question. I definitely started off playing Pokemon competitively.
Okay.
And I really think that's kind of how this idea birthed. A lot of my friends ask me, how did you come up with this thing that people actually use?
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought to myself, Pokemon is something that I've put more than enough time into to understand kind of where things need to be improved upon. I think it was about 2 years ago. I don't know if you guys know this. I made a Chrome extension to help with translating Japanese Pokemon reports from websites like ML Game into English.
I did not know that. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's such a good idea. Wow.
Yeah, that was the first thing I wrote in JavaScript, and the code was really, really awful, but it was the first time where I wrote something that I made, and I could see people getting excited over it and using it. Mm-hmm. And people were telling me, this is great. And that was kind of the starting point for me doing kind of these tools or development for VGC. Mm-hmm. In terms of development experience with websites and whatnot, all of it is basically self-learned.
Right.
Oh, wow.
I go to school right now for electrical engineering, not computer science or computer engineering. So
wow.
I basically just took it upon myself in my own time. I also have to credit that a lot of my friends are actually studying these fields, mm-hmm. and it was really useful to bounce ideas off of them because they are far more experienced. They have more internships than me, and they have bigger projects than me.
Right.
So that was kind of it. Yeah, I just basically thought that there is something here that I think people will use, and I happen to have the skill set to realize it.
Absolutely.
And that was kind of how BabiriNet came to be.
Why don't let's get it directly from your mouth. Can you explain to us what Babiri.net does? What can one person do by typing in Babiri.net in their browser right now?
So the first thing is it takes you to a page where it will display all the top 100 teams from the most recent poll. So every day at 12 a.m., I have a Python script that runs, and it basically scrapes for all 100 teams if they're available. Mm-hmm. So the teams come from effectively replays. So how I do it is I have the top 100 users at 12 a.m., and then I look for these users' replays, and if their replay exists, then I can find their team and what 6 months they used, and then I can store them into a database, and that's where the website effectively generates these teams from.
I see.
So what you're seeing is just the 6 teams of a user, their rating at the time, and a link to the latest replay that's available. That is the main purpose of this website, if I had to say. It was just recording every day and having some usage stats. On the right-hand side for the day, you can see the usage stats for each Pokemon. So, for instance, Togekiss is really popular right now.
Oh, yeah.
Of all the available teams, it's on 41 teams, and you can see this on the right-hand side. I have also a bar chart to basically give a little bit of data visualization, make the website a little bit nicer.
Absolutely.
Besides that, on the main page for teams, you can type in specific Pokemon and it'll return all the teams from that day. So, for instance, if you type in Togekiss, you'll be able to see all 41 teams that have a Togekiss on their roster. And similarly, you can search by date. So, for instance, if I wanted to know the Pokemon from a week ago, I could type in 2020 February 18th, and it would return all the Pokemon from that day. So, yeah, that's the basic overview about the teams page. I have one more page as well. So, it's under usage, and usage is basically a data visualization about how much the usage of each Pokemon changes over time. For instance, if you type in Togekiss, you'll be able to see, starting from about February 3rd or 5th, I believe, is when I started recording data, you'll be able to see about how the usage rises and drops throughout the week or months or season. So those are the two main features about Babiri.net. I was thinking about possibly adding more features if and when I have the time, but I haven't really thought too much about it.
What kind of features are you thinking of putting in?
So one of the ideas that got bounced around was different formats. So right now, Babiri.net supports only VGC 2020, and inevitably, I will definitely try and make it support VGC 2021 and beyond. Mm-hmm. But maybe formats such as OU doubles and whatever is popular. Part of the problem is I'm fairly out of the loop, so I don't know what people like to play.
Yeah.
Making the website a little bit more mobile friendly, I think, is a big one.
Oh, okay.
I think about 80% of my users are mobile,
Oh, wow.
which I was not expecting. I thought people would just be team building from their computer and just have it on a tab. So that was an interesting insight. I'm pretty open to any ideas, and if you guys have any ideas, you can let me know. Anyone else can also just let me know by messaging me on Twitter.
I gotta say, this whole time usage, like seeing the Pokemon's usage over time, is such an incredible tool. Because
Absolutely.
yeah, me and Mike have always like tried very hard to see meta shifts, to see where the metagame is going, especially towards the beginning of the season where a lot of people were just experimenting with everything. Like nothing was well defined. We're just like to see, oh, let's see how far Excadrill is going to change this week, or how far is Whimsicott going to change this week. So seeing that visually is just such a good tool. I'm looking at Togekiss right now. It's so interesting because at the beginning of the month, you could see it slightly go down until Oceania Regionals, and then it spike right back up.
That's very true.
Yeah, so that's all. That's like that kind of information is super interesting to me.
And for me, like ever since this site came out, I've been checking the usage for Excadrill like almost daily. I just want to see it drop so badly, and I know it's going to happen, and I hope it's going to happen on March 1st once all the new Pokemon come out. But until then, it's been very interesting to look at. So I know that you said that you're not particularly in the loop, but has putting together this site kind of either sparked an interest at all, or have you been kind of looking at the data and being like, oh, that's interesting. What have you been noticing by seeing the results of the thing you made?
I think I'm done competing for good.
Oh,
I just don't have the time to put into this game anymore. A little bit funny story. I wasn't intending on getting a Switch.
Uh-huh.
And then my friend got me one for my birthday.
Good friend.
That was 2 months ago. It's still unboxed because I've just been so busy between the site and work. So I will actually probably hopefully unbox it tonight. We'll see. Besides that though, in terms of competing for me, I think that's pretty much off the table for now in the foreseeable future.
Okay.
Even though personally for me, I really enjoy putting together tools like this and seeing other people use them. That's where my value in the community lies.
Mm-hmm.
If there's anything, I might go to events just to help take photos as a volunteer. That's another hobby I have.
Cool.
Is there anything in particular of usage? Togekiss usage is really insane.
Yeah.
I think that's the one thing I've noticed.
Yeah, it's a little overbearing. And I don't know if you know, but next week we have Incineroar returning to the metagame.
Really?
Yeah.
I've heard about this. I need to prepare my website for that as well.
That's true. That is true. Tell me a little bit about your competitive history.
My competitive history lies back in 2014. I think the first Premier Challenge I went to was probably June 2014 in Surrey somewhere. And I went 3-3, I think. Yeah, this was a long time ago, but I remember it because it was the first experience with the community, and I really enjoyed it. The people in BC really make it. And I've met people like my friend Rafael Bagheera. He's a big part about how I got into this community. Besides that, I played pretty much locally. So I'm from British Columbia, so I mostly played in BC. I would go to Seattle regionals every now and then. I went to more events from 2015 to 2016. Yes. So 2015 to 2016 was the first format where primals and the Ubers were legal.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it was also the first year I was in university. So I kind of just took it upon myself to think I could probably go out to a few more events. So I went to Oregon regionals. I think I got top 16 there. I went to Mid-Season Showdown, which happened to be at my school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was pretty funny because I had a final, I think, 2 days after that Mid-Season Showdown.
Wow.
And that was rough. But I went to the Mid-Season Showdown. I ended up winning it, which put me in a really good position for a Worlds invite. And then I went to Seattle Regionals as well, which happened, I think, in May 2016. I ended up getting top 4 there. So that gave me my invite.
Whoa.
And yeah, it was really nice getting my invite before nationals. It was super unexpected. I also ended up getting a top 64 stipend because I did pretty well at basically all the big events that I went to. It was really cool. I think this was before the snowball and the new stipend system came into effect. But for those unfamiliar, back in the day, if you're top 64 in your region, so for me it'd be US and Canada, you would get basically money if to go to nationals. And so with that money, I went to nationals. I did not do well at nationals at all. I also went to Worlds because it's pretty close by. I think that year I was in San Francisco, and I ended up meeting a lot of cool players. As a side note, I think Worlds is one of the coolest events just because everyone from everywhere is there. Got to meet players from Japan that I occasionally talk to, got to meet players from Europe who I'd never seen before, but it was a fantastic experience. I didn't do well, but I don't regret it. It was amazing.
When you say didn't do well, how did you do at Worlds?
I think I went 1-3.
Oh.
I brought Raidon. I didn't know how to play Raidon, and I faced a lot of Rayogur. Oh,
jeez. But I mean, when you top cut everywhere else, it doesn't matter how well you do at Worlds, yeah.
I mean, that's pretty good, yeah.
It was a really fun year. It's just that starting from the year after, I think events locally started to die down, and regionals in general were more sparse. I think for the Pacific Northwest, an increasing concern's been how we have one regional a year, whereas before we would have two. So before we would have two of either Vancouver, Washington, or Portland.
Yeah.
And now, due to, I think, gambling laws, I could be wrong on that, Seattle is no longer an option, and Vancouver, I think, doesn't have the attendance to justify holding a regional anymore. So we're effectively just stuck with Portland on the West Coast, or at least the Pacific Northwest, which is a little bit unfortunate. I think the game has changed a lot in terms of how stipends and the player base is developing since 2015, 2016-ish. I think there's a lot more people playing now compared to when I was playing, and I think the average level of play is generally quite a bit better from what I can see. I was fortunate enough in my year where there happened to be 3 events near me, and everything just kind of fell into place. Ohio was still far.
Yeah.
But everything else was fine.
Well, you know what? Let's take a little break. And then when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about Babiri.net. We'll talk a little bit about the community in general. And then maybe let's get into some Pokemon as well. We'll talk to you then. Welcome back, everybody, to our conversation with Kelvin Koon, a.k.a. the creator of Babiri.net. Kelvin, I didn't ask you this question at the very beginning, but I play with 1 Pokemon on my side of the field. Kevin plays with 2 Pokemon on his side of the field. I know you've been out of the Pokemon scene for a while, but how many Pokemon do you play with on your side of the field?
I play with 2.
There you go.
But team preview dictates I pick 4.
Now, I'm curious about kind of the reception from the community ever since Babiri.net came out. Now, I know you've reached a level of success with your site so far. Do you know offhand how many people have visited in the 3 weeks that it's been out?
It's been out for a week, I think. So I launched it.
It's only been out for a week?
Yeah, time flies. I have Google Analytics on the website, and I think 2 days ago it was past 3K users, which is really, really impressive.
That's amazing.
It really is. I'm super, super happy to see that people are really using it. In terms of the overall reception, it's been generally very positive. But there was one point I wanted to clarify and bring to light, was someone reached out to me asking about how the teams were pulled, because there were suspicions of people using bots in order to scout private rooms, for instance. And so I can make very clear that I don't use bots for the website. I'm way too lazy to make one. All the information that you see is basically pulled from public information. So public replays that are available on the Showdown server. This website's main objective is just to get all the information displayed in one place, so you don't have to keep clicking back and forth. I think that is the best way to look at the website. Otherwise, reception's been really, really positive. A lot of people have been basically messaging me, telling me they use it a lot, and it makes me really happy to see that. And in the future, I hope that as the community grows larger and things develop more, we will hopefully be able to see more tools like this. And gonna give a really quick shout out to as well VGC Stats and Picolytx, because those 2 were a really big inspiration for the ideas and some of the fundamentals behind how this website was made.
Well, you know, I will say, and to give you a kind of pat on the back there, thank you for mentioning VGC Stats and Picolytx. We were just having this conversation today in our Discord. I feel like this isn't a site that's meant to necessarily replace either one of those 2. But I think it's more to use in conjunction. I think this is a very worthwhile tool for anybody to use just to see what teams are being used. Because I mean, people are doing this already. They're already going on Showdown and trying to find the most popular teams. But most people just do that by playing a bunch of games themselves. This actually puts everything in one spot for people to view. And then if they really want to drill down on how to build these Pokemon and what the popular ways of building these Pokemon are, then they can go over to things like Picolytx and try and figure out how to really specify their team.
I was actually spending a lot of time on Babiri.net yesterday because I was just scrolling through a lot of the top teams, and I find it that Babiri is like such a good place to start. I was making a team and I was just scrolling through a lot of these teams, and I know Kelvin said he's out of the meta, but there's this really interesting mechanic with Hatterene and Max Guard using it on top of the Trick Room move and Copycat Liepard. And I got that like inspiration before you were able to do it with Riolu, but Riolu's Riolu. Now that, Pokemon Home came out, you're able to do it with Liepard, and I would have never known that unless I was scrolling through these top teams and seeing people use Liepard. And then I watched one of the replays, I'm like, oh, I understand. And then that's when I based my whole team off of that just one replay.
Yeah, I'm doing a little bit of research right now on exactly what you're talking about. The number 71 team at the time of recording includes a Liepard, Hatterene, and then for the people listening who want to know, also a Torkoal, female in DD, Conkeldurr, and Trevenant. And to that point, it's a team that I haven't really seen before, and it's a team that I'd be very interested in looking into the replays of. But to get 71st in all of Showdown, that's a rating of 1817, which for context, the number one team is only at 2014. So that's only like a rating difference of about 200, which does not take that long to get to if you're on a good enough win streak. So that's really interesting. And then, of course, you can go to the replay through Babiri.net and take a look at how an actual game with that goes. Then head on over to Picolytx and try and figure out how to make that team.
This site is definitely not meant to replace either of those. There was some talk that I had with a friend about if VGC Stats has some kind of public API that they want to make or something like that, then I could maybe... It would be cool to do some comparisons between how teams do on Showdown versus events. I think the creator of VGC Stats is probably a little bit too busy right now, but it's something I'd be interested in possibly talking to him about in the future.
Right, for sure. Yeah, that collaboration would be amazing. I would love to see that.
With Picolytx, actually, the owner of Picolytx actually lives right across on the island. So he lives in Victoria.
Oh, wow.
And so he came over for the mid-season showdown a few weeks ago, and I got to meet him, and it was really cool.
Huh. Did he say anything about the site? Did you get a chance to show him what you had? I know it hadn't come out.
The website was super, super early in development. So effectively, by that time, all I had was the 100 teams in Pokemon. I didn't have the usage. I didn't have the visualizations, and I didn't have the search engine.
Interesting.
So I showed it to him, and he said he liked it.
Good.
But it was really fun. It's just stuff like this where I get to meet people who I wouldn't normally meet by doing this project and getting feedback and learning as much as I can as a developer.
Of the feedback that you have received, what piece of feedback did you get that was, I would say, most impactful?
Most impactful, I think, is in terms of sheer quantity, about the number of people who said that they would use this when it was in development. So in terms of development, this took 6 weeks. So starting from January 4th until I think February 15th or 17th, somewhere around there was when I finished and deployed it. I was basically constantly churning out small samples, like, here's what the website looks like, here's what it can do. Would you use this? And people around in BC, some of my friends were like, yes, I would use this. It's very convenient for me to do so. The mid-season showdown in particular was, I went over there because I had some friends who were playing, and I showed them my demo about the 100 teams and what I was planning on further doing with it. And people were basically telling me, again, they would use it. It would be super, super convenient. And just hearing that was really, really motivating to finish it. Because in the development field, a lot of students are told to make personal projects. The problem is most of your personal projects are not that impactful, or they're not you don't learn a whole lot from them. They're super basic things like to-do lists. And so this was the first time where I did everything from scratch, and I had to consult people for both advice and input, and I had to go look for who would use it, get feedback from them. Like, the website definitely looked different than when I first started it.
Right.
Yeah, so in terms of that, the number one thing I can say, though, about feedback was the positive feedback and people telling me they would use it, 110% was the reason why I finished this website so quickly.
So thanks to the community.
Yep.
I like that. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to send you a link. This link has a list of all of the Pokemon that are transferring over, or Pokemon that you can get, essentially, coming this March 1st. March 1st, of course, being the day that Series 3 of VGC 2020 begins. And, you can use a whole slew of new Pokemon. Now, not all of the Pokemon on this list are going to be legal come VGC 20, but a large handful of them, including the Gen 1 and Gen 7 starters, as well as, Kevin, help me out here, the Alolan forms. So everything below transferable exclusive forms. So we've got Alolan Vulpix and Ninetales, Diglett, Dugtrio, Persian Rapidash, and all the normal forms like Unova, Darmanitan, and Corsola, and all those Pikachus. Now, I want to have this conversation with Kevin, but also I want to bring you in because you are a world's competitor, and I did not know this going into this, so I want to kind of get your ideas on this too. What Pokemon do you think are going to see, or are going to make these are going to make stats on Babiri.net? What Pokemon are you going to see usage jump up for? Kevin, what do you think?
Incineroar.
Of course. How do you think that curve's going to go?
Oh, I think it's going to be a gigantic spike and maybe decline over time because Incineroar did receive a lot of nerfs in terms of its items, and like Dynamax is probably not too good on Incineroar or against Incineroar.
You think we're going to see like a massive spike, probably up to like the levels of Togekiss?
Everyone's going to try it, yeah.
Oh, of course. And then it'll drop down steadily as people realize, oh, wait, we can't.
Yeah, probably that. I think Alolan Ninetales probably also.
Incineroar is definitely a big one, but I think Sajin was tweeting about this, and he is talking about how he thinks it won't be too bad, because the format overall, for now at least, seems a lot more balanced. In 2019, I got to play and experience Xerneas and Incineroar, and that was fun. But the point still stands in that the partners for Incineroar are a lot less potent this time around, so I think that'll probably play a part, as well as the nerfs that you guys mentioned. So the big one is Fake Out doesn't work on Dynamaxed Pokemon, I believe.
Yeah, that's right.
Something else that's worth noting is Venusaur, because I know Torkoal is a pretty popular Pokemon right now, and I think the Chlorophyll partner is usually Vileplume. Admittedly, I don't know what Vileplume does. I know what Venusaur does, though, and Venusaur in general is a pretty good Pokemon, so I will expect it to see usage on Trick Room teams.
It was Kevin's favorite for a hot minute. Vilecoal.
Yeah.
Vilecoal
Was a whole thing.
Yeah, Vilecoal.
Yeah.
It was after you Eruption.
After you, I see.
In the sun. But what's exciting about Venusaur, since you did mention that we're probably going to see a Venusaur spike, I agree with that too, because Venusaur is going to be the fastest Sleep Powder user, and there's no Spore in this metagame. Well, there's Spore, but it's on that Grass Fairy.
Shiinotic, right?
Yeah, that one. So Sleep Powder, Wide Lens is probably going to be a thing. Some people are doing that with Vileplume. People are doing that with Compound Dyes, Butterfree.
Yeah.
So Sleep is always good.
People are still doing it with Gravity Hypnosis.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Incineroar and Venusaur are definitely the big winners. And I guess Blastoise would be cool if it gets Water Spout. I don't remember if it does anymore.
It actually gets Shell Smash this time around.
Oh, that is really cool.
Yeah. Fancy.
It's very fancy. I want to now look at the top, let's say top five Pokemon at Babiri.net. Do you think that those top five will remain top five, or do any of the Pokemon that are coming in kind of threaten, are direct threats to any of these? Now, I'll kick it off in that I do see Alolan Ninetales. If people are going to try and start using that, then Togekiss is feeling a little threatened by that.
Another one is Excadrill. Doesn't like Incineroar like at all.
Oh, that's true.
Incineroar and Excadrill was definitely the big one I could think of off the top of my head. I also wanted to mention, so for those listening to this, the top 5 right now are Togekiss, Excadrill, Conkeldurr, Arcanine, and Rotom Wash. The stats change quite a bit near the top. So Dragapult was pretty consistently second or third, I think, going into this week, and now it is sixth.
Yeah.
And what else is there? Whimsicott as well.
Whimsicott
is at seventh, and it's usually up there as well. So it's really difficult to say.
Usually paired with Duraludon, who is now number 8.
Yeah. I see Incineroar being still very good, just not as omnipotent as it was this last year. So I think if I had to make maybe one prediction, physical type attackers will probably be a little bit less strong, because I think based on the top usage, quite a few physical attackers compared to previous years. Right?
I would agree with that.
I think another thing is Arcanine would lose usage because you wouldn't really need an Arcanine and an Incineroar on the same team, and Arcanine's just a budget Incineroar at that point.
People would just kind of choose one or the other, especially with the dark typing versus prankster users. What about Rotom Wash? Do we think anything comes for that? Well, Venusaur, first of all. Oh my.
Yeah, Venusaur definitely threatens it.
Venusaur's a big one. Ninetales gets freeze dry.
Yeah.
That's true.
Lapras is going to get a G-Max too. That gets freeze dry.
Yeah. Lapras coming in with G-Max Resonance, which essentially sets up a free Aurora Veil that you don't need Hail for.
After using an Ice Hyper Beam, essentially.
Yeah.
That is really cool to hear, because Lapras is actually, at least from before, Lapras was doing not that bad on the ladder from the top teams. There was someone using it. And I think Lapras will probably see a bit more usage, if I had to guess, because I didn't know that we were getting more forms.
But Lapras is actually really interesting that you mentioned that. I looked up Lapras on the usage percentages on Showdown as you were saying that, and it's only been between 1% and 3% for basically this whole month.
Yeah, I think it's mostly like 2 people carrying the Pokemon.
Yeah.
I definitely think
That's
it has
about
its
to go
place.
way up.
I think
Absolutely.
the sets that they were running were very interesting, and the teams and the support behind Lapras probably made it as good as it was on the ladder.
A big decline that I'm actually seeing is Dragapult went down 10% from the beginning of the month to right now.
Yeah, I agree with
Jeez. And that's something I've been seeing like in practice. Like there was almost no Dragapults at Oceania Internationals. And it's like a Pokemon that was so popular in the beginning. Everyone was running Dragapult.
That's very true.
And now, just bye-bye Dragapult.
People are looking into other ghost types now. They're looking back into Gengar, pairing that with things like Bisharp. People are looking into Gourgeist now. It was so funny, actually. Just today, I got a comment on our YouTube page saying that they were accusing the Gourgeist on our video of being hacked, and we were like, wait a second, what do you mean hacked? And they're like, oh well, Gourgeist doesn't appear in this game. Gourgeist isn't in the Galar Dex. Actually,
we don't blame you for not knowing, because no one used it until last weekend.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's definitely a little bit of a disparity in grass types, I feel like, this year.
100%.
I'm not actually sure what Gourgeist did. I know it did really well at Oceania. I just don't know what it's supposed to do.
It trick-or-treated a Tyranitar to remove fighting type weakness.
Oh, that's actually so
Trick
cool.
or Treat essentially adds a ghost typing, which is really, it comes in really clutch in some situations because of Max Knuckle, which is one of the 2 max moves that actually increases an attack stat. So to actually completely nullify a Max Knuckle, you are essentially denying 2 Pokemon of a +1.
And Conkeldurr's number 3 right now. So
yeah,
get rid of that Mach Punch.
That helps.
I see.
Especially because we do have several Pokemon right now, including Tyranitar, including Bisharp, who do go down to a single Mach Punch from a Conkeldurr. So that's also one of the reasons that we're seeing a lot of Dusclops play, apart from the fact that it's a great Trick Room user. I'm trying to find other ghost types in this meta. Chandelure is another one.
Mimikyu is also pretty popular.
Yes,
Decently
absolutely. Certainly. Yeah. Number 16 as we go right now. Daily team stats is something that's, I would say, rather unique to Pokemon websites. What do you think is the biggest value add to this site? Not necessarily daily team stats. Could be that, could be anything. What do you think this site accomplishes that other sites currently don't? And why do you think that's important?
It's an interesting question. I think the biggest thing is definitely just the top 100 teams section. I don't know how other people do it, but how I used to do it was I would literally go have one page of the ladder, one page for the replays, and I would copy and paste usernames to find teams. I was just looking at this and saying, there's got to be a better way.
Right.
I think that's definitely the biggest thing that my website brings, just having that nice database, and you can find teams and sort that through them. You don't have to just click through 100 different teams, right? You can just type in, I want to see all Excadrill teams, and you'll have all of them displayed right before you. The user stats were something that was a little bit of an afterthought, where I just thought, since I already have all of the teams, I might as well try and do something with the stats as well. I think in the future, there's definitely potential for me to flesh it out a little bit more. I'm personally not very good at math or stats, so I would really need to consult someone. I definitely think that the biggest thing is just having all the teams in one place, having you be able to scroll through it, and being able to search by either Pokemon or date is definitely the biggest thing that my website provides.
Why the name Babiri?
I'm really bad at coming up with names, but also
because it's fun to say.
No, I think it's a great name, actually. And I mean, it's so funny that right now we're seeing such a predominant usage in Togekiss. Because a thing that Togekiss love to run are the Babiri.
Yeah, so I used to write for a different website back in 2016. I used to be part of VGC with Hats.
Oh.
And so their mascot was Togekiss. And so I really came to really like Togekiss.
It's come full circle.
It's come full circle. That is correct. Seeing Togekiss doing well is really, really cool. I'm not going to lie. But I was really bad at coming up names. I was like, I like Togekiss. Togekiss number one item is the Babiri Berry. All right, that's the name of the website.
Perfect.
Oh, that's great.
Yep.
Thank you so much for making this site. You've made my team building so much easier.
No problem. Stuff like that really makes me happy.
Keep doing what you're doing. It's fantastic work. And anybody out there who's looking to put together a team and needs some kind of inspiration, if you have a favorite Pokemon, go to babiri.net, babiri.net. Search up that favorite Pokemon, see some teams that are built around it, and make your own. Enjoy your time playing Pokemon. Kelvin, where can people find you if they need to ask any questions?
My website has an About section, and if you scroll to the very, very bottom, there's a Contact. And so it has my website, it has my Twitter, and it has my GitHub if you're into checking out what developments I do. My Twitter is at NotCelsiusDeg, I think. So NotCelsiusDeg, like not Celsius degrees.
Kevin, where can people find you?
Instagram, Twitter, X-Rays, Ovation.
And of course, you can find me at StillJustMike at Instagram or Twitter. You can find our podcast on Twitter at Pokesports Pod, or on Instagram or Patreon at Pokesports Podcast. Of course, make sure you send us an email at pokesportspodcast@gmail.com to ask us any questions or to give us any feedback about how you thought this episode of Pokesports Plus went. Until then, I hope you guys have a fantastic week, and we will see you on Wednesday. See you next time.
Later. Bye-bye.